All right, guys, Mr. Antonucci here, and in this video, I want to share with you two examples of how to factor a quadratic equation where the leading coefficient is not 1, and how to solve an equation that involves those types of quadratic equations. So notice in this one, we have 12x squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. When we factor it, we want to get it into the product of two binomials set equal to 0 so that we can use the zero product property in order to solve this equation. The problem is, since the leading coefficient isn't 1, we can't use the methods that we did in previous videos. So the method I'm going to show you is by far the easiest method I've ever seen for solving a quadratic equation by factoring where the leading coefficient is not 1. Some teachers show you how to do this by guess and check, but this method will get you to the right answer the first time. So once your quadratic equation is in standard form, in other words, the terms are in decreasing degree of x or decreasing exponents, and the last term is the constant. What you want to do is multiply the leading coefficient and the constant, including their signs. So 12 times -2, which is -24. Now, we're going to look for factors of -24 that add to the coefficient of the middle term. So you can start listing factors, and you know that the bigger factor is going to have to be positive. 24 and -1 are factors. They do multiply to -24, but they don't add to 5. You can go 12 and -2. That's not going to work because that gives you 10. You can go 8 and -3. Bingo. There we go. So here's what you do. You don't set up your two binomials. What you do is you break that middle term of 5x using the 8 and the -3. In other words, you're going to rewrite it as 8x minus 3x. Notice that does simplify to 5, but this is the first step. And then you bring down the other two terms, 12x squared plus 8x minus 3x minus 2. And then what we're going to do is factor this by grouping. We've done video on that previously. So you group the first two and you factor out the GCF there. You're going to get a 4x, which is going to leave you with 3x plus 2. From the second group, it looks like we're close because you have -3x minus 2, and what you factor out is just a -1 here, and you get 3x plus 2. Then you can factor out the quantity 3x plus 2, and that leaves you with 4x minus 1. Now, since we have it completely factored, if the problem just asked you to factor it, if it wasn't set equal to 0, you box that and that would be your answer. But from there, what we're going to do is set each factor equal to 0. So the 3x minus 2, or excuse me, 3x plus 2 equals 0, and the 4x minus 1 equals 0 as well. All right. In this case, you subtract 2, divide by 3, and you get x equals -2/3. And here you add 1 and divide by 4, and you would get x equals 1/4. Those are our solutions. That's a 3 right there, looking a little ugly. All right, to check it, you could substitute those values in for x and simplify, and it should come out to equal 0. Okay, let's do one more real quick. You might have a situation like this where your quadratic equation is not set equal to 0. First thing you typically want to do when solving quadratic equations is set the equation equal to 0, because the next thing you're going to do is try to factor it. So we would subtract the 2x from both sides and the 4 from both sides as well. So you'd have 6x squared minus 1x minus 2 equals 0. And then from there, it is in standard form. You could multiply the leading coefficient times the constant, including the sign. So that's -12. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look for factors of -12 that add to -1. Since they have to multiply to a negative, you know, one factor has to be positive and one has to be negative. But since they add to a negative, the bigger of those two factors has to be the negative one. So we're going to do our factors here. -12 and 1, not going to work. -6 and 2, those would add to give me 4. Not going to work. -4 and 3, bingo, those two add to -1. So what we do is you rewrite the middle term using -4 and 3 and add them together. So instead of -1x, we're going to break it into -4x plus 3x, and then bring the rest of our polynomial down, 6x squared and the -2. And then if you remember from our previous example, we're just going to do factor by grouping. The first two, you could factor out a 2x, and you would have 3x minus 2. And notice the second group already has the 3x minus 2 in it. So you could just group that and you don't have to factor anything out of that one. Notice the two quantities in parentheses are the same. So we factor out a 3x minus 2. Now here's where some students get mixed up. You factor out the 3x minus 2. We know we're going to get a 2x. But this second factor of 3x minus 2, when you factor everything out of a term, you need a 1 there as a placeholder. So that's going to be +1. Okay? So now we have the polynomial completely factored. You can always check your work by FOILing out or multiplying out or distributing your factored expression. Okay? Now what we're going to do is set each factor equal to 0. 3x minus 2 equals 0. And 2x plus 1 equals 0. In this case, you'd add 2 and divide by 3. So you get x equals 2/3 there. And in this case, you'd subtract 1, divide by 2, and you get x equals -1/2. And those are the solutions. Okay? So hope that was helpful to you in factoring some quadratic equations and solving them. If you have a question that you'd like me to go over, feel free to put it in the comments. Let me know what the math problem is, and maybe I'll be able to make a video about it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications when new videos are available. All right, guys. Again, hope that was helpful. Make it a great day. Take care.